So I'd kind of like to start with having a go at, as I mentioned earlier, any volunteers who would like to explain to the group what it is that they think that I do. Are there any takers?
I'm happy to give it a go.
Go on,
Go,
then,
go
please.
on, Caesar.
I would say you are there to basically, if a business is in trouble, to see if there's any way you can find to help with the creditors, etc., to actually save that business or make it the most amicable deal if you can't save the business. Or also, as we found out more recently, if you have a fully solvent business that somebody actually wants to sell, in order to help them with that as well.
Very impressed. I'm very impressed. Pritesh, I think you had your hands up. This is kind of cheating though, because Pritesh and I
Oh,
have worked together and I've helped one of
yes.
his clients. But
Peter, I was going to say, let one more person go before Pritesh goes, because I know you two
agreed,
have a very close relationship.
agreed.
If no
Any
one
other
else,
takers?
Susie kind of stole my thunder, because I was going to say, about you help people who are in a situation sell their business, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. But I think also it might not just be insolvent businesses that you can help people with. You can give advice on people who actually just want to sell a business, whether it's insolvent or not.
Yep, yep, spot on.
Right, go on then, Pritesh, educate us all.
I have to say, Susie done a great job in summarising it really well. So well done, Susie. But listen, it's such a highly regulated area, insolvency. So a lot of the time, there's aspects where you need an insolvency practitioner where you don't even realise you need one, just with the way the kind of legal framework is. So, for example, Susie, you mentioned about solvent liquidations, but also there are times where a partnership would need to liquidate for tax purposes. It may need to liquidate in order to incorporate into a company. And so there's various aspects which to do with tax planning where you actually need the services of an insolvency practitioner just to make sure it's done kind of in the right kind of legal framework.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much. I am actually very impressed with all of those answers, and I suppose that fills me with some happiness because it means that the conversations that we're having and the presentations that we are doing are indeed resonating. There's one word that wasn't really mentioned much, and that is kind of the people that I help. If I was to summarize it in real layman's terms, what do I do? I would say that I help people. I help people either in some financial difficulty, they might be in a situation that they want to get out of. They might be owed money and don't know what to do. So all kinds of very, very different scenarios. So the most obvious one is company directors. Could be a one-man band. I don't know what the female equivalent is in this day and age. I suppose that encompasses everybody. To kind of serial entrepreneurs who might have 20 registered limited companies and one may not be doing so well. It's really quite a mixed bag. I'm always saying that a company in financial difficulty is not necessarily a failure. It may well be something really innocuous, such as a bad debt. So, for example, if you're in construction and you had one bad job where the client is refusing to pay, then that completely decimates your cash flow, means you're unable to do the future work that you had in the pipeline, and it could be absolutely no fault of your own. There's also now so more than ever just a very, very volatile market. I think that the price sensitivity out there is causing people to think twice about purchasing, think twice about that additional service that they may well need. So it's not necessarily a failure of the individual, a failure of the business. They're separate legal entities. It's not one and the same thing. And so when these people are in need of help, the difficulty is probably in terms of education, getting people to understand that it's okay to ask for help, and also knowing where to ask help from. Individuals, obviously separate to directors of limited companies. So individuals can be in financial difficulty. For example, if someone's built up a lot of credit card debt, and it's become unmanageable because of, say, a change of circumstances or loss of a job, then there are mechanisms, both formal and informal, to be able to assist them. Those with more complicated affairs, such as they've got property that they own, or that they have a specific job, such as an accountant or a solicitor, whereby actually what their financial standing is of paramount importance. And so you could look at, for example, informal arrangements, or potentially something like an IVA, but subject to their authorizing regulatory body being made aware. And then thankfully to my previous introducers who touched on solvent sales, insolvency isn't all kind of doom and gloom and owing money. It can be used as part of a restructuring process. Quite an obvious one is retirees. So if you've got a successful business that you've then sold on, you may benefit from a solvent liquidation, so that you can claim entrepreneurs relief, which is paying 10% tax on the first £1 million in your back pocket, rather than the equivalent in dividends, but also gives you that kind of finality and closure that the company has been put to bed, and as part of the process, there won't be any comebacks. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the people that need help and how we can help them. Just a little bit about kind of myself and the firm. So there's 17 of us in total, 4 partners. Our senior partner has been in insolvency for 40 years. I've been in insolvency. I've just started my 16th year. And we have quite a range of ages as well. So we've got 4 AAT trainees who have joined us in the last kind of 18 months, from 17 to 25, and it's great to have kind of new blood in the office as well. So my final point about people is not just who we help and who we are, but also who we rely on. And I'm always saying this, is that everyone is only as rich as their network, only as strong as their network, and everybody's net worth is their network. So for me, the vast majority of my work comes from accountants, because when directors or people in general are in financial difficulty, the first door to knock on, and the most obvious door to knock on, is to speak to your accountant and say, look, I'm struggling with this and this, at which point then it may well be that accountant will say, look, you need a conversation with Peter, who'll be able to spell out what your options are. The other ones slightly rarer, I'd say. And at the moment, 90% of my work comes from accountants. The other 5% probably from solicitors who are dealing with, for example, a dispute, or trying to pursue a bad debt, and it might be acting for the creditors who have suffered from or been hard done by a company, and they want to take action. Walk-ins are pretty rare. I think we have maybe a handful a year. So we're based in Whetstone, on the high road. It's one of the roads that goes through Finchley and eventually into central London. Walk-ins are rare because it's a tricky subject to discuss, and you need to know who it is that you're talking to, and someone's far more likely to open up if they say, I recommend Peter, or I've dealt with him in the past, rather than a walk-in. So in summary, the people are the most important aspect of what I do, be it the ones that we help, the people in the office that help make it happen, or the people that refer those in need to us. I think that brings me to 10 minutes. I don't know if we've got any time for any questions.
Yeah, we've got a minute or two if anyone's got any questions. Susie, have you got a question?
Yeah, one thing I do think is your businesses, when they're in financial problems, that's when they need to speak to you. But obviously there's a cost for your services. How do you overcome that obstacle to actually show them that it's actually better for them financially to come to you than to stick their head in the sand and try and solve things on their own?
Very good question. So I don't charge for initial advice. We just don't charge for initial advice. So I might have 5 conversations and I might end up being instructed on one of them. That's just the nature of the game. So first and foremost, you lose absolutely nothing by finding out what your options are. If it's early enough, then it's more likely than not that a formal insolvency appointment would be the right thing. It might be go and speak to this lender. It might be refinance these assets. It might be, just continue as you are, monitor the situation. And if that big contract lands, then you're, looking at your cash flow forecast, you're going to be absolutely fine. Those are the conversations that are nice to have, but it's usually far too late in the game for those kind of options. It's usually, unfortunately, very reactive. It's like, I've received this letter from HMRC. They're talking about court action and a winding up hearing. I was like, great, we've got 2 weeks. As opposed to, again, education of finding out what your options are and who you need to speak to. In terms of the cost, it's actually the company. So if it's a company, then first and foremost, the company bears the cost. So it should come out of whatever residual there is in the bank, or potentially out of some of the assets. So cost shouldn't be a barrier to entry. And on personal insolvency, it can be taken out of the assets as well. In certain scenarios where there's nothing in it, then people have to put money out of their own pockets in order to deal with the company problem. But I think once people have an understanding of what the option is and how it would benefit them, i.e. you put the company into liquidation, these debts die, 1 or 2 where there's been personal guarantees may survive, in which you're going to have to settle them. But more often than not, it's getting to grips with the options and picking the right one, and then the payment of it is not as bad as you think.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter. And Jonathan's got a quick question, I think. Jonathan.
If we've got time for another one. Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Pete. So what's the difference? I mean, some people, I know people, they end up with bank loans that they can't pay back. And then they say, well, do you know what? I'll just let the company wind down.
Yeah.
What's the difference between insolvency and letting company's house shut you down? Because I've got a feeling, I know this guy, he had a bounce back loan. He's just let the business go. And I said, you've got to go for insolvency. And he said, no, it's a limited company. They can't come after me. I think it's going to come back and bite him in the arse.
Yeah, in short, you're spot on. So it is a criminal offence to allow to apply for a voluntary strike off to dissolve the company when it has debts. It is a breach of your director's duties to allow a company to be struck off by Companies House because you haven't filed accounts or your annual return, and it has debts. So at some point, one of the creditors, the bank, HMRC, may well seek to reinstate the company into a compulsory liquidation process. at which point then, you know, the director's conduct is reportable to the insolvency service. So in short, doing nothing is usually a very bad option.